Just popping in with a little switch up. Hopefully this isn't a jump scare, but yeah. I thought for today's video we'd do a little something different. I thought maybe we could do a little printing on fabric. And in order to do that, we're gonna need to carve rubber, which I honestly absolutely despise doing. I really like carving linoleum. I even like carving wood more than I like carving rubber. Rubber is super soft and I have a really difficult time with it. I'm gonna do a voiceover walkthrough of everything that I'm doing, and keep in mind this is only like the third time that I've even attempted anything like this. So I have felt, I have spare cotton square fabric to practice on. I also have a couple of my own clothes that I'll be practicing on as well. If the practice rounds go okay, I'm hoping that I can potentially print on some thrifted clothes. Come along for the ride and we'll just see where this ends up. Also, I really wanted to take a moment in this one because this just came in the mail. And I just really wanted to say thank you for being here and hanging out and watching my stuff. It does more than I could ever possibly explain to you. You watching my stuff helps me continue to be able to make things for a living, and that's really all I ever want to do. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I couldn't do it without you. And let's see how we do block printing on fabric. Okay, let's get started. I'm using the Speedball Speedy Carve. It's a rubber block. Any rubber block should do. And instead of using gouache like I normally do to stain my linoleum, when I use rubber, I like to use acrylic paint. It just sticks a little bit better. If I use gouache, it would just flake right off because it's a little bit different surface. And I think this helps my image transfer stick as well. This is Alpha Acrylic from Alpha 6 Paint. It's kind of a heavy-duty acrylic paint, but any acrylic paint should work in a similar way. I want this to be thin enough that it just stains the block. I don't want any brush strokes to really be visible, so I'm just trying to thin this out as much as possible. If there's any brush strokes or if the paint's too thick, that could appear in the final print. So I'm just going over that a bunch of times to make sure it's as thin as possible, and then I set it aside to dry. If you know my image transfer method, then you know what this stack is. This is the stack of label backing sheets that people donate to me, and I use them for my image transfer method. So sticker backing paper or sticker release paper works the same way. I put it right into my inkjet printer, and then I print my designs. I draw all my designs myself in Procreate on my iPad, or pull them from my sketchbook and bring them over into my computer and digitize them. So this method works great for me because I have everything digital to begin with. I'll put a link in the description and up in the corner to the full image transfer tutorial. When I use this transfer method with rubber, the ink can still smudge a little bit, so I like to kind of dab it off on a piece of scratch paper, and then I just check in between each one to see the status, see if it's still smudging or see if it's good to go. On this second one, I got a faint transfer there, and then there wasn't any smudging, so it was ready to go. To set up for carving, I'm gonna grab my same non-slip shelf liner that helps it just stay in place so it doesn't scoot around while I'm carving, and then just a bunch of different tools. I pulled most of them from the FlexCut micro palm set, they're super tiny, and then I also have a few from the beginner palm set as well. I tried to keep these designs pretty simple. Like I said, I am not a fan of carving rubber, and I wanted to be easy on myself by keeping basically no details at all and just having these be super kind of graphic shapes. I find carving rubber to be more difficult than harder surfaces. I like to work with harder carving materials because I feel like I have more control over my carving, and also I keep my tools very sharp, so when I'm carving with sharp tools in rubber, it just scares me really bad that I'm gonna slip or just go right through the entire block. So I know that rubber works really well for cloth and fabric printing because it's flexible, it has more give to it so that you can get a better print, but I'm just really not big on carving the rubber, but I'm kind of okay with the way that this all went down. Carving rubber is also how I got started, so if you're a beginner and you're carving rubber, that's totally fine, and you'll find what works for you. Some people stick with it forever, and then some people move on to other things. Some people never carve it at all. So whatever works best for you. This is just personal preference, and you know, I'm still figuring it all out myself. For this skull design, I needed more of those micro tools just to get in the smaller areas, especially around the teeth. I needed my smallest V gouge, and I was able to clear that out pretty well. I was pretty proud of myself for how well I was able to clear this out. Usually I'm taking huge chunks out of the rubber, and this went smoothly today, all things considered. Once I had the designs all carved, cleaned up, and cut out, I put some reference marks on them so that I would be able to know where the centers were, so I can line them up wherever I'm putting them on prints or on clothing. I just kind of have a good idea of where the center of the design is. I'm using the Speedball fabric block printing ink and a Speedball brayer. These, for some reason, are so sticky. I'm not really sure why, but they are very sticky after you clean them off. If anybody knows any tips about how to get them not so sticky, let me know. I'm applying a couple layers of ink, around 3 layers of ink, pretty liberally. I want this to be pretty well covered with ink just so that it can saturate whatever I'm pressing it into. I'm testing out on cotton first, just some scrap fabric. And first I tried it with felt underneath just to see if that extra give underneath would help to get a cleaner print. So I'm laying down my inked up block and then running over it with my brayer. I'm applying some decent pressure and then checking out the print. I wasn't really happy with what the felt did. It just added more texture underneath. So I'm gonna go with just a piece of scrap paper right against my hard surface table. And I liked the way that turned out a lot better. So that's what I went with. Here's the comparison. There's the felt and there's the hard surface. So that's what we're gonna do. And just for good measure, I wanted to try out my skull block on a piece of scrap fabric as well. So I'm gonna ink this up, a couple layers of ink applied liberally, and then test it on the scrap fabric before I move on to the big leagues of pressing right onto actual clothing. Despite being super nervous, I was finally ready to just give it a shot. I just eyeballed, no pun intended, lining up these eyes on either side of the buttons, and then I aligned them with each other vertically with those center marks that I put on the back of the block. And I'm using that same technique. I'm just applying a liberal amount of ink, pressing it onto the fabric, rolling it with my brayer, and then pulling up. This ink dries to the touch in about 24 hours, and it fully cures in a week. No heat required, so don't need to heat set it, which is very convenient. I used a t-shirt guide for my skull design on this little crop top. I just thought that that would be a smarter move, even though I like to just kind of wing it most of the time. And that is all she wrote. I think these turned out really cool, and I am so excited to print more things on more stuff. I was super nervous, and I don't really know why. Let me know what you think. Let me know your questions, and I will see you on the next one.